Buying an older home, if done wrong, can cause you in tens of thousands of dollars in unneeded expenses. So before you go purchasing your next house, make sure you do your due diligence. Now, there are many people who end up purchasing a property like this one here, but they end up, demolishing it, putting something brand new on it. Now, if you're not going to be doing that and you're planning on living in the house, some things you might need to know is about home ownership costs. We found a fantastic chart online, and I'd say it's pretty accurate, but homes that are built before 1960s sometimes can cost you up to 8% of the home's value every year in maintenance costs. Now, a new home can sometimes be 1 to 2%, and everything else, all those other years, it's just a sliding scale. So we're gonna walk through a whole bunch of things for you to look for before you purchase this property, because we don't want you to walk into a problem and basically you want to find the best house that you can because it's new to you, but it's an older property. So the first thing you want to do is have an inspection done. Ideally, an inspection is done during the condition period where you have 3-4 hours, you can go onto the property, you can look around, do your things. But if you have to write an unconditional offer in this type of market, sometimes you can have an inspector come with you to the showing and look at as many things as they are able to. For example, they could look at the electrical panels, they could look at the roof, they could look at mechanicals, making sure your furnace and hot water tanks and those kind of things are working. Check your windows. Sometimes older windows are actually better than kind of the 1990 or 1980 windows. A 1960 wood window in great condition can be better than your aluminum. And so things like that, you want to have an inspector kind of check and look for visually during a showing. Another thing that you want to look into is asking the seller how long a home has been vacant for. Because a property that's been sitting vacant and not having all the mechanicals and fluids and all this stuff moving around, it can actually cause more problems. And so make sure that a home that you're looking at has not been sitting empty for an extended period of time. Because a lot of these homes, there's aging people living in them, right? You have elders living in them. And so if they end up passing away, for example, it could go into probate, and that home could sit inside of probate for a year, waiting for everything to get done with the will. And there you go. You have a house now that has been sitting empty for over a year. There are 3 things that you want to make sure you kind of are aware of when you're actually purchasing one of these properties. The first one is lead paint. You want to check for asbestos, and you want to check for radon. Now, asbestos itself is typically used in homes just like these that are all built kind of before 1980-ish, right? They stopped selling it in the late 70s, but they ended up still using it in homes being up into 1970s, 1980s. So it's something that can happen and can be here. And it can live in places like your lino. It can live in places like your paint. It can live in your drywall. It can be everywhere. Trust me, I had a house. We had water issues, we had flood issues, and we had to get abatement, I think it's called abatement, for asbestos. And it was tens of thousands of dollars that the insurance company had to put out because asbestos was there. So these 3 things are 3 things that are very important to check into when buying an older home. So plumbing and water is something you really want to consider and investigate when buying an older property. The reason being is leaky pipes and water inside of houses can turn into mold. It also can cause health issues. But more importantly, in these types of properties, you can see the big trees around me here. All of these trees have roots. Those roots are where? In the ground. Where does your sewer pipe live? In the ground. And what happens? Roots will hurt and cut and break sewer lines. So having a sewer scope done in homes that are built, honestly, anything before 1985 in the 1980s and older in Calgary is really important. Because if that break or something is wrong and it's on your property line or inside of your lot, it could be 30 grand, like up to those types of costs. If it's on the city side and it's not on your property, then the city pays for it. So knowing these things is super important before pulling the trigger. A hint that we just learned probably in the last week or 2 is you can actually line a sewer pipe, and that actually can save you tens of thousands of dollars and cut the cost in half, and you can have a warranty on that as well. So something to consider. The last thing is looking for structural damage. So this could be looking at door jambs and seeing if there's any gaps, looking at slanting floors. It could be walls that aren't square. All of these things are signs that the house is shifted. If you start to see those things during showings, you may want to get a structural engineer in to look at the property before it's yours. Now, I know there is so much information that we are giving you in this video, and that is why we put it together in a PDF guide that you can download. So head to the description and download that for all the details. So the next thing on our list is mold and moisture. So here's a little story for you. In our last house, we had a bungalow, 1962, I think it was built, and the last owner renovated it, but they didn't like gut it and redo it. They just painted over what was there. And so we ended up having a bathroom that we wanted to ensure mold and moisture wasn't a problem, you know, with all the showering and the water and heat and steam and all that kind of stuff. But we wanted to make sure that we had good ventilation. And so what we ended up doing is we asked someone to come in to basically give us a quote. And they said, we're not going to touch this unless you get it tested for asbestos. And the problem with that is now you take a $200-300 job, and if there is asbestos in the walls, which we weren't fully sure if there was or there wasn't, could turn it into a multi-$1,000 job. And so this is something you have to consider when you buy an older home, is the possibility of these expensive changes and maintenance things when it comes time to wanting to upgrade something. So the last thing you want to consider upgrading is your HVAC system and installation. So looking at your furnace, making sure that it's in good condition, considering putting an air conditioning in, because summers are getting warmer in Calgary. And lastly, it's kind of looking at your windows too. That's a part of insulation. If those windows are older, need to be replaced, price that out. A good rule of thumb is about $1,000 per window. Just count it up, and that's roughly how much it's going to cost to replace a window. Now, the other thing is energy and safety. So energy is all about your electrical panel. If you do not have an electrical panel that is big enough in its amperage, you want to have something that's about 100 amps. If it's smaller than that, you might have a hard time getting insurance. And radon, air quality, those are also very important things. Ask your home inspector to do a very quick radon test, because a lot of them have those kits, just to get a sense of what's in your air, because we breathe it. So if you have that and you know that, that's going to help you understand what you need to upgrade and what you need to fix in your new place. At the end of the day, it's super important to have the right team around you and choosing the right agent and their team to help you figure out what you're going to do. And you want someone that's going to be honest with you. And if honesty is what you're looking for, then you're going to want to head to this video up here where we talk about the real truth of buying in the market today.